On this episode of Warden's Watch, we are sitting down with the owners, creators of the HuntRegs app, Ben Martin. And thanks, Ben, for joining Warden's Watch so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to get into the nitty-gritty here.
Yeah. So let's tell us about the HuntRegs app right off.
All right, so the HuntRegs app has two main features. First one focuses on regulations. So rather than a hunter having to go through that 80-page brochure just to find the few lines of information you need, all they need to do is specify their target location, whether that's by using their current location, dropping a pin, or selecting their specific private land zone or public land area, and then specifying their target animal. After that, it gives you the few lines of information you need, such as the season types like archery, muzzleloader, general firearms, the season dates associated with those season types. And then we have much more details like whether that land is public or private, any weapons restrictions or general restrictions like antler restrictions, if there's anything specific to that area. Like some places in Michigan, for example, if you're goose hunting, you can't have more than 20 rounds with you. In Florida, there are certain areas where you can't hunt on near the roads or like on the top of a dike, things like that. I go through all of these specific areas and put in those little weird things that'll get you. In addition, we have all of the required licenses and permits for that animal at that location. So there's no it's easy to know what you need for that area. And then I'll go through and put in any notes or things that I think might help out the person that are specific to that place. I also have a link to that area specific state brochure or website, depending on the state, but I'll have a link to more information on that government site. And then in partnership with IWC, we hooked up the specific poaching reporting hotline and URL for that specific state. So you have all that information right there. Super easy to get to. We also have all the boundary lines at the beginning of this kind of search process. You can hit a view zone on map. It'll show you the boundary lines for any public land area as well as any of those private land zones.
So let me get this right. So here I am. I'm from New Hampshire. I decide I'm going to go hunt in New York, which I like to. And there's all kinds of different rules and regulations for areas. So I use your app, and one side of the road has different regulations than the other side of the road. So I go on the one side of the road, I hit your Hunt Legs app, I either geolocate myself or I can drop a pin in that same area that I want to hunt. And it's going to tell me, hey, it's open for deer, archery, crossbow. You have to have this permit, that permit, um, bang, bang, bang. When I go to the other side of the road, it's going to say, hey, it's closed for hunting. Where you are, where you're standing is closed for hunting.
Yeah. I go as specific as is possible. Even like a lot of areas, they'll have different, even just general WMAs will be split. So I'll go in and I'll split those public land areas if they fall in different, like a 3 deer county in Ohio versus a 2 deer county. Or if there's antler restrictions, I get as granular as possible. So you know exactly where you drop that pin, that you know the regulations and you're legal.
Right. Because as a game warden, I've written tickets for people doing the wrong thing in the wrong zone, for sure. You know, one guy had a moose permit for the other side of the state and he shot a moose in the wrong spot. Had he had the hunt regs, he would have been able to say, hey, I'm not supposed to be here.
And even like super common, especially in the South, they'll have little archery only pieces, especially if it's like near campgrounds or things like that. That's where you get in trouble. It's never marked on trees or anything, but I have that in the app. Everything is separated. It's very easy to tell.
Right. And then, like you mentioned, Michigan, a 20 round sh shotgun shell limit when you're out hunting, which is something, where if you're not from that area and you're not used to it, that's something that's really helpful.
Yeah, and it's just there's like probably 10 WMAs or I guess wildlife areas there that have that.
Right.
And that would be a big ticket. It's to keep people from sky busting. If you only have 20 shells, you're probably gonna hold off.
Yeah, you focus on your shots and you make sure
Yeah,
they count.
yeah.
Makes total sense to me. I love that rule actually. So because
I do too. Yeah.
yeah, your focus is on yeah, because
That's how
let's
they should be
say
hunted. I like waiting until they're in my lap to pull the trigger.
uh make sure they're in range. I don't know how long I try teaching my son. I still don't know that I've taught him the distances and what's effective in shooting waterfowl at certain distances. And
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to let them come in or hard to let them go
yeah.
without without making some noise, but that's all you end up doing is making noise at them. So
Yeah. And nobody wants to cripple them and then they swim under some grass and you never find them. But you want to fold those things at 10 yards, ideally.
yeah. So where'd you get this idea to create this app?
So my brother and I came up with this when we were both in college. We are both first generation hunters and fishermen. So we were figuring out all of this out on our own. Didn't have any mentors or anything starting out. So we were just pulling up the brochures and doing our own research. And being that we were in college, we were hunting a bunch of different states, whether we were home or traveling. And I'm sure, as you know, and everybody that's hunted in multiple states, the regulations vary wildly.
Mm,
And we found ourselves making a lot of mistakes, despite being, I'm a diehard researcher. I like having as much information as possible before I go do something so I could be the most dangerous. And we were finding ourselves making mistakes, not like we were shooting deer out of season, but didn't know in Michigan that I could go buy a $5 doe tag at the gas station. I could buy one of those every day of the season. So I was passing on deer waiting for a buck, but I didn't know just because it wasn't very clear.
hmm
Things like that, or that certain areas were open hunting that we didn't know about. So we thought that if being that we are diehard researchers, we thought that the average guy probably was not going to those lengths and was just didn't care or was just winging it. Say I'll do my best, and hopefully I'm in the right. Um, and being with how technology is these days, we thought that there had to be a better way to display this information.
mm,
There had to be a way to compile all of this data and put it in a very digestible format so the average guy can just hit two or three buttons and know that they are legal in this place. Because I mean, there's the I guess being that we were first generation hunters, I didn't know about public land. And we didn't really hunt because we didn't have access to any private land. My college roommate introduced me to public land, and I remember the first time I got out of his truck to go walk on this piece in Texas, I was like, "There's no way it is legal that I can be walking around with a gun on someone else's property. I cannot believe this is legal." After the day went on, those feelings of uneasiness went away, and then I was very excited at this opportunity that we have access to millions and millions of acres across the country that are ours just if we buy a hunting license and a lands permit.
mm,
Uh, so after that, really got into the public land thing, and the regulations are even more complex on public land. So we set out to figure out a better way to compile this information, and that's what we've done.
mm. Yes, a young mind that grew up with cell phones in hand and wanted information, at your fingertips that most of us have to sit there and read and interpret. So, and even the Wildlife Digest nationwide have gone through. They used to be a little pocket thing you stuck in your back pocket you could look up to now this magazine type style that so in order to pay for the printing of it. And but those usually get left beside the toilet, the outhouse, in the truck, you name it, and it's not on your person to begin with, and it certainly doesn't geolocate you. It's like you said, it's probably somewhere in that book, somewhere else it references another part or this or that or applies to it.
Yeah, and I mean, you have your typically your licenses are on page 5, your season dates are on page 10, then shooting hours are 20, bag limits, everything's spread out. Even
Mm,
though most of the time all the information is in those books, you got to look in 10 different places. And if you're not, I would consider myself a regulations expert at this point, and I still find myself having to call the office if I'm doing a new state and be like, hey, what I need some more explanation on exactly how this license type works. If it's an either sex permit, you know how it is. There's always those weird little things that'll get you. So especially if you're traveling out of state or you're a new guy and you didn't have a dad or a grandpa that explained these regulations to you, it can be very complex.
right. And wildlife regulations change yearly. So, I mean, in our book and a lot of books, it says, new regulations for 2024. And that's the first page, even as a game warden, I go to because really we don't know. We see the process of the changing, but we don't know whatever went through and what didn't make it until those books are out. And sometimes they'll forget a regulation or it's just, yeah, it can be archaic the way the process goes, and you even have to deal with that. You get that data from the last portion of it. So,
Yeah. And I mean, my brother and I are both big conservationists. I have an environmental studies degree as well as business, so we're very into that side of things as well, and believe that The rules are there so the management practices can take place. Talking with Georgia, they said I think it was 70% of their like wildlife crimes are accidental. Just people didn't even know they were
Mhm.
breaking the law. However, that makes it impossible to manage the population of animals. You can't wake the deer back up and send him off on his way. That
Right.
hurts management. And the management's there so the hunting will continue to get better and better for everybody as the years go on. But if things can't be managed correctly because people are breaking the law, that makes that more difficult. So this ideally we can cut down that 70% to a much lower number if people can really easily find those regulations.
Right. Right. Even if you're just checking yourself, as you start out and you just hit the HuntRegs app and you look at it, just to confirm in your mind what is what and how it's how. Because, generally we have a general idea if you live in that area, hunt that area. It's when, like you said, when you're moving onto new areas that you have no clue, new states.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, even like I live in Georgia, Georgia's WMA system, every single WMA has different regulations for the most part. And especially late season, I'll find myself, I might go hunt one WMA in the morning. It's archery only at this point, and I can kill anything. It's antlerless, antlered, no antler restrictions, whatever. And I can drive 15 minutes down the road and hunt another place that evening. It's gun season and it's antlered bucks only, has to have 4 points on a side or a 15-inch spread. So,
hmm,
and that's I'm hunting those same spots in the same day. So I'm checking the app all the time just to make sure I'm hunting so many different places. Just do a quick check. Okay, I know what the laws are here. Nothing's changed. To especially in places like a lot of the southeast where those things are very tightly managed on a location specific basis. I find that very helpful.
yeah, and since you brought that up, it's a good segue into some of the other things that you have in the app that you really like and you find really effective, like your journaling.
Yeah. So I'm a data nut, I would say. I think probably comes from a little bit of that environmental studies background. Um, I don't believe that animals do things on accident. There's always a reason for what they are doing. So I thought that there had to be a good way to. Everybody talks about, oh, you should keep a journal of your hunts or keep a journal of your fishing because that'll be valuable down the line. But when you're taking a paper journal or doing things on Excel, it's great to jot down notes, but it's hard to actually have an actionable plan from that data. And it's hard to bring all that data together in one place and figure out a pattern. So we put together a journaling system where you put in your date, time, location, what you saw or got on trail camera. And then when you save that entry, it saves all the historical weather conditions up to 14 years in the past for that location at that time.
Mm,
Then because it's in that standardized format, you can filter these entries by a variety of variables, whether it's date ranges, weather conditions like a wind direction or wind speed, a specific target buck that you're going after, or maybe just antlered deer in general. There's tons of different options that you can do for that. And then I have these graphs that you can display these filtered entries on, and it makes the patterns very obvious.
mm,
I've been using this heavily for the past 2 years now, and it is unbelievable how there's almost always a pattern, especially when it comes to like a big buck. General deer movement as well, but if things may seem random, you get 10 different trail camera pictures, it might not make sense. The second you throw that in the app, there's almost always like an 85, 90% of the time they're doing things for a specific reason. And then it becomes pretty clear once you see it on the graph. Like, okay, it makes sense why he's doing that. But you couldn't tell that just by those trail camera pictures. Everybody loves getting pictures of big bucks or turkeys or whatever, but actually being able to take that picture and then create a plan to go kill that animal is the difficult part. And that app makes that super simple. And
mm.
it differs a lot from like a general deer prediction app. Everybody knows if you've got a cold front coming, the deer movement's probably going to be great.
Right.
But likely the greatest influencer of animal movement is hunting pressure. And all these animals have a different kind of personality. Everybody knows that turkey that always does something weird every season that you've never seen them do before. They're same with the bucks. They do things for a reason because that's why they're still alive.
Mm,
Uh, and those general deer prediction apps they were missing something. I've used them all, and they were missing something when it came to my specific deer herd or my specific target buck at my specific location. And this app allows you to use your own data to actually figure out those patterns.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that because even hearing the stories of ages past, certain guys shooting, big deer consistently in the same spot and generational for sure. But, it's just being at that one spot. It's a routine. The weather may be right, the wind direction may be right, and may be very similar to their experience. And yeah, I see that happen. Not quite often, but it does happen. And you're right. That's what you're recording, and you're creating a database based on that, and it gives you better success rate in the HuntRegs app. So that's something you kind of created because you wanted it, huh? In there,
Yeah,
it's kind of a bonus to the HuntRegs app.
yeah, and I did the whole Excel spreadsheet and looking up Weather Underground for the historical data. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, being having the business degree too, I have a pretty good knowledge of Excel, and it was still pretty complex to figure this out, and it took a lot of time. So I figured there had to be a better way to be able to create these patterns and these graphs, just so like anybody can do it. You don't have to be obsessive like I am about it, make it a little bit easier for just someone that's maybe more of a weekend warrior to be able to manage that data. So you're not wasting your time out there. Every time you see a deer, you don't see a deer, that was for a reason, or whatever you get on trail camera. So you don't want to waste that data. That can all be useful. And
Yeah.
it does work.
Yeah, for sure. We're such a busy society, and that's that's what trail cameras have developed to the degree they have. And, this is certainly helpful because we only have so much time to spend in the woods. We want to be effective while we're there.
Absolutely. And I'm excited for this fall. I ran probably 40 cameras last year
Hmm.
in Georgia. And I have some time windows where there was big bucks hitting certain areas for 2 or 3 days.
Mm.
Like 2 or 3 days in October, 2 or 3 days in November, maybe 3 or 4 days in December. And they were never there any of the other times. So I know that I don't need to waste my time at those spots. They're great spots, but the deer weren't there at that point. So I'm really excited to get in there and test that this season. That whole idea of 365 days later, if the weather conditions are similar, um, if they show up again. I know a lot of people have a lot of success with that. So I've got several big bucks that are in trouble.
Yes. Yep.
I'm just-
No, that's good. You get an appointment, I hope. So
Yeah,
see if
I
it
got an
comes off.
appointment.
And, we have a kind of a unique story how we met. We were at the NWTF conference. I was the interim director for International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, and I've had a very selfish, reason to continue, a relationship with you guys. But I remember, living out of the Ohio booth there. Those guys were great, and I really appreciate it. Become good friends, and I remember looking down, and there's two guys in suits that they're talking to, and they both pointed at me. The both wardens pointed at me, and Ben, that's not usually a good indicator when two wardens point at you with grins on their face. So
Yeah,
there's two guys in suits talking to him. So you and your brother came down, and we started to talk about the hunt regs regulation, and that's almost 2 years ago, huh?
yep.
And
Coming up on it. Yeah,
my main my main focus being at that conference and usually is for international wildlife crime stoppers is to stop wildlife crime. And I wanted to incorporate hunt regs into that. And you guys were open arms with that idea and right away put ways to report wildlife crime, linking every state in every Canadian province. Not maybe do we do Canada as
I
well?
haven't done Canadian
We
provinces
have
yet.
not done Canadian provinces yet, but
Yeah,
we linked every state so people within the HuntRegs app had a way to report wildlife crime. It linked them right to the state reporting method, which was great because we went through that again, and you had it in two different spots how to report wildlife crime on your app, which is awesome.
yep,
So, but we have developed since then. You hanging out with wildlife crime stoppers, game wardens, started to see a need for how to report poachers. And I think the beginning of that was when we started with a committee, International Wildlife Crime Stoppers. We took game wardens from around the country and we started that committee that basically you helped us on because we had no clue what we were doing. We knew the information we wanted and you knew how to put it on. But we were trying to build our own app. We were going to do an International Wildlife Crime Stoppers app. And the price tag you put on it kind of set us in the back seat. As a matter of fact, I tried to get sponsorship for it, and yeah, that set us way in the back seat every time. They were like, "Whoa!" And it's a big price tag, isn't it, to develop an app?
Yeah, the app stuff is not cheap. Takes a really long time and it is very expensive.
Right. And through working with us, you decided there really was a need to report wildlife crime, and you could kind of use your app and what you had built to do it, right?
Yes, sir. I think I already had a lot of the infrastructure in place with the regulation searching and that journaling, with all of the georeferencing, that I figured it would be not a huge lift to add that into that. And being my brother and I we hate poachers. We are always about doing things the right way. I think if you can't do it the right way, it's probably because you're not that good at hunting. If I'm being honest, if you got to cheat, it's probably because you're not that good. So and I really do feel like that whole adage of that you're stealing from everybody else when you're poaching, we do believe that. So if there was a way to help get more of those guys out of the woods, and make it easier on you with our current system being tweaked a little bit, we thought that that was a no-brainer. We're not that we're not going to make our business on the poaching reporting, not going to make a bunch of money off of that, but I just thought that that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, 100%. So working with that group, we developed kind of game wardens developed a kind of a checkbox list for reporting poaching, things that we wanted, that we never had before because it's being designed to catch poachers.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. I spent a ton of time with you, a bunch of time with the guys down in West Virginia, talking with them about things that they run into and information that they are missing a lot of times when they get those phone calls or like a text or
Mm,
something like that. Um, and in my experience, working with software and technology, and I know you and I have talked about this a bunch, is you need to treat people have very little patience when it comes to apps, and
yes.
they get really dumb when it comes to apps. So you need to treat your user like they're a 5-year-old, um, and in doing that, you want to give them a lot of information for what you are looking for. It
We
needs to be
want to be treated as a 5-year-old too.
yeah. Well, because
Yeah.
nobody wants to, you're trying to do something good. You don't want to have to figure out a system. You want it to be very easy. Everything's laid out. What is the information that I need to give them? Because you're reporting because you want it to stop. You're
Mm,
anti-poaching if you're reporting. So you want it to give them as much information as possible. But if you don't know, the average person probably doesn't know what a game warden wants. It took me some time working with you guys to know exactly what you needed.
mm,
So in doing so, we built out a poaching reporting form that is incredibly detailed when it's asking the user for what information they want when it comes to date, time, location. We have a lot of mechanisms in there that allow the states to kind of filter and do data analytics on these reports once they come back, as well as just get enough information to arrest somebody rather than someone was fishing illegally down at the dam. Doesn't give you a whole lot of information to go on, but with this system, we have the geo-referencing, we're getting exact coordinates, really good descriptions of what took place. And it makes it so the game wardens can then take that information and go catch these people much more efficiently.
yeah. No, that's you started to understand the systems really quickly, when states are sometimes difficult to understand, but you already had that, back knowledge from doing all the regulations and then starting working with law enforcement and understanding what we needed. And then you put it all together and you are working with your first state, right?
Yeah, we are starting the process with the state of Georgia, which is awesome. That's where I live now. Gotten to know those guys really well. Spent a lot of time with the colonel there, and we have a great relationship going now, and excited to roll that out for this fall. We have several other states in the works as well.
Yeah, no, and I'm so excited about this, Ben, because this was my vision the whole time.
Yeah,
Um, but it may not have the IWC mark on it, which is fine with me. I just wanted a better mousetrap for catching poachers.
yeah. No,
Um,
and I definitely and that's something that we need to work on is incorporating. I want there to be a lot of IWC hunt regs stuff
mm,
like this as well, because none of this would be happening without you. Um you've been the tip of the spear for me, introducing me to all these guys and always talking good behind my back, kind of speak. So
yeah,
and I really appreciate that. And now it's what we've been grinding away and things are starting to come together here.
Right, because game wardens aren't always the best with technology. We have some good game wardens that are very good with technology, but I'd say the general part of us, we understand what we want. We would never know how to get there. And even working with you, I have no idea how you got there. So, but it's all that in between stuff, that data entry, that building the app, and having things work together is just boggles our mind, I think. And it's, but to put it all together it there and then make it changeable to each state's needs. Some states want it reported to a supervisor, some states want the officer and the supervisor, some states want to go to their dispatch. And you're making that all happen specific to the state's needs.
Yeah, and I guess we didn't really jump into the auto dispatching piece of that either. Rather than having to have a dispatcher that goes through all of these reports or taking these phone calls, the app and kind of my admin system for the game wardens, it uses georeferencing, recognizes where that reporter, the location that they gave, and it automatically sends that report to the relevant game wardens that are responsible for that area. In addition to a supervisor, if they want, it can also send it to the dispatch, but it's going directly to the game warden immediately. So it's
Mhm.
saving you guys. I don't know how many man hours and money it costs you to have these dispatchers and to manage all this data. I know it sounds like even the colonels are having to go through for the reward system and spending hours trying to figure out who these people are. And the system automates all of that.
Yeah.
In addition to everything's anonymous. But for the reporter, obviously, a lot of times poachers aren't really good guys. You don't necessarily want to have your name attached to a report
Hmm.
and have any blowback come towards you, but the system is completely anonymous. Even if the state came to me down the line wanting to know who reported, the way I built it, it's impossible for me to give that information. It's the user is completely safe unless they choose to not be. If you want to give your phone number and email or you want to receive a reward or something, you have that option there. But if you don't want to, it's you are 100% not tied to that report. It's just sending that relevant information to the game wardens.
Right. And a lot of people like being that anonymous person. So they want people to get caught, but they don't want to get involved. And sometimes I understand. Sometimes it could be a relative. Sometimes it could be very close to you. Sometimes the information you could give would identify who the person was that gave the information. So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of reasons to not identify yourself. But on the other hand, some people are dang mad about poaching and they're like, hey, we want it to stop. And you know what? I'm the guy that told them.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I usually want to know if it worked. Like, did you catch the guy?
Right.
Especially, I mean, if there's nothing like, especially a lot of times in Georgia here, and I think sometimes that's just people not knowing private land is open for gun season. A lot of the public land has gone back to archery only, and there's still guys, you're still hearing shots on the public all day.
Hmm.
Those are deer that are getting killed that shouldn't be getting killed. So that kind of stuff drives me crazy too. So I'd love to know, did you put a stop to it?
Right. And another thing, a lot of states give out rewards. You can actually get paid for being tips. And I would say 9 times out of 10, they need to know who you are so they can get you the money. Now, sometimes that money comes in a paid Visa card, generally is what we give. So, but we still have to know who to give it to.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can do all that within the app and it makes it very easy for the state to track that down. So if you do give good information and you choose that you want that reward, it makes it very easy for them to get that to you.
Wow. No, I'm so proud, Ben, of what you've done, and I'm very proud that the International Wildlife Crime Stoppers has been attached to you since the beginning. And as I told you this earlier, the way you've changed, the way you've learned how states work, what they need, and have just filled and flowed and changed, and then kept going back and saying, "What do you think of this?" And then got tweaked again, and "What do you think of this?" And it's been a process to your first contract with the state of Georgia, which is incredible. We're blazing new trails here for wildlife crime. I'm ecstatic about it. I don't even know what else I can do in my tenure as an executive director to get topple this because I think together we have done a stroke of business.
Yeah, and I always appreciate all the help that you've given me and always going to bat for me. And we're going for all 50.
Yeah,
We're just gonna
absolutely.
keep going. And that's another whenever I'm working with these states, I am here to, I want this to be as good as possible when it comes to the
Mm,
regulations, the journaling, and the poaching reporting. So I'm pushing app updates like weekly a lot of the
mm,
time. I always want it to be better. So if people have ideas, I'm sure we'll have my information somewhere here on the podcast. People have ideas. I always want to hear. That's how we make it better, is by hearing from our hunters. So I'd love to talk with you. And in addition, all game wardens and state kind of game officials get the whole app for free. The regulations and the poaching reporting will be free, but the journaling is a paid upgrade. But I'm giving that away to the game wardens for free.
nice. Nice.
Yeah,
We certainly appreciate that. That's nice. And the relationship, yours is an example of how I want to build the International Wildlife Crime Stoppers is relationships with outdoor companies and that are committed to fight wildlife crime, other nonprofits that don't have that wing of enforcement in them because there's a lot of nonprofits that, they pay for the biology, they pay for habitat, but the key they forget is, you can make all the regulations, you can have all the land for people to hunt on and to have preserve that habitat, but without, the game warden in there enforcing the regulations, you have nothing. You really
yeah,
don't. You need teeth in the game, and that's what we always are. And to support, the teeth in the game, that's what International Wildlife Crime Stoppers does. Not always the most glorious thing. Sometimes law enforcement, isn't thought of that way, but I guess maybe that's where I come from. All those other things are so important. It's a big wheel, and that's what makes it turn. And when there's a cog missing, we all know it because it
yeah,
clunks. And
yeah,
and really none of us work well without any of the others.
yeah. Rules are only as good as their enforcement.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love your logo. So, and you
Thank
want to
you.
tell everybody your logo?
Um, we got the antlers over the pin, that like kind of like pin drop like you'd see on Google Maps or something like that. As kind of the head of the deer. Got the hunter's orange and then like a forest green as our color scheme here.
Mhm.
App's called HuntRegs app. Slogan is stay legal, strike smart.
Yeah, and I should have said slogan because that's exactly what I was looking for. Your hunt regs is nice. I love the antlers with the geo locator right there. Boom. But stay legal, strike smart, and I just love that. We start off with stay legal because that's what hunt regs is all about, making the honest guy honest. It's a tool so you can get there. It's easier by far than any regulation digest put out there and certainly is affordable for every hunter for
Yeah.
sure. So,
And our kind of mantra is that hunting is hard enough as it is. Managing your regulations and your hunting data doesn't have to be. And
mm,
I'm not promising that the app is going to have you kill big bucks or a bunch of turkeys every year, but it will make patterning them and managing that data very easy.
right. Yeah. And I think that's a unique hunter. You and I have had this question. I don't know if I spend the time journaling like I would, but there are those guys that just study so much about
Yeah.
hunting and learn, and they're extremely good at it.
You ought to give it a try. It's pretty cool. Every time I've had someone, it's like, oh, I don't know, I don't like apps. Once they throw some camera pictures, or even just old kills in there from old pictures,
Mm,
like, wow, there is a pattern here. Like I learned something already, and it's that easy.
yeah,
So
for sure. No, you've definitely talked me into starting to do that. Got to take the time and be more effective when I'm out in the woods too.
yeah,
So, hey, thanks for sitting down with Warden's Watch because I know, all those other associations, but certainly Warden's Watch is part of that association too, to get the word out. A lot of state officers listen to the Warden's Watch podcast. So if they are interested in trying to line something up and can send it up the chain of command, how do they reach you, Ben?
so my email is ben@huntregsapp.com. You can also reach me at huntregscontact@gmail.com. The website is www.huntregsapp.com. I have my information there as well. Yeah, just if you want, if you're a game warden and you want to get on that journaling or strike smart, just
Mm,
shoot me email. I'll hook you up with a free code, and I'd love to get your feedback. If you guys are using it, if you have any ideas, like I said, we're always trying to make it better. So the more feedback, the better.
Yeah. No. Thanks for
And if
joining
it
us.
works and you kill something, tag us on Instagram or send me something. I'd love to hear your
Perfect.
story and see how it worked for you.
Yeah.
Something how someone else is using it.
Yeah. Absolutely perfect. So, no, really appreciate you sitting down with the Warden Spots podcast and sharing all the hard work that you guys have done to help, make the regulations easier and to report poaching. Just pretty awesome.
Absolutely happy to do it. Trying to better the hunting community here. So
Great. Thanks, Ben.
thank you, Wayne.